dripped from my fingers onto the frozen steel floor. The warning lights inside the command chamber had already gone dark. Only the emergency lamps remained, painting the shattered room in a dull red glow. Outside the observation window, the endless white storm swallowed everything. My fortress, my life's work, humanity's last sanctuary. Gone. I could barely breathe. Half of my body had been pierced by broken alloy fragments. My vision blurred, but I still saw them. Marcus Hale, Elena Voss, Director Quinn, the people I had trusted most, the people I had saved, the people who had just abandoned me. Marcus stood beside the escape pod entrance, his expensive coat spotless even as thousands died below. "I'm sorry, Adrian," he said quietly, "but the Omega Core belongs to someone capable of leading humanity." I stared at him. Capable? I had built the Sky Ark. I had spent 14 years keeping everyone alive. I had repaired engines while starving. I had traded my own blood for medicine. I had buried thousands. And now they spoke about capability? Elena couldn't even meet my eyes. Her voice trembled. "We had no choice. No choice." The words almost made me laugh. Director Quinn adjusted his glasses. "The Ark needs stability. Your obsession has made you irrational." Obsession. My voice came out weak. The storm shield failed because Marcus sold reactor crystals on the black market. Nobody answered. Because they knew. They all knew. And they stayed silent. The emergency siren screamed. Structural collapse imminent. 30 seconds. Marcus sighed. "You should rest, Adrian." Then the escape pod doors closed. They left. Not just me. Everyone. The core chamber. The dying city. The millions who still believed help was coming. They left us all. I slowly turned toward the shattered window. Snowstorms covered the sky. Humanity had survived 13 years after the world freeze. And now, everything ended because greed had finally won. My breathing slowed. Strangely, I wasn't angry. Only tired. Very tired. The faces of countless people appeared inside my mind. Dr. Una Park. Captain Iris Kane. Professor Mei Lin. Those women had trusted me until the end. They died protecting civilians. And I failed them. I closed my eyes. If I could do it again, I wouldn't save everyone. I wouldn't carry everyone. The people who expect endless sacrifice are often the ones who value it least. Darkness swallowed me. "Engineer Adrian." A loud voice exploded beside my ear. I opened my eyes. Bright sunlight. Warm air. The smell of coffee. No blood. No alarms. I froze. The engineering conference room. The old table. The old projector. And on the screen, World Climate Report. Date: June 24th, 2041. 10 years before the world freeze. My heart nearly stopped. No. Impossible. I grabbed the calendar. Again. Again. I stood up so violently that the chair crashed backward. Everyone turned. Marcus Hale frowned. Adrian, 28-year-old Marcus. Young. Healthy. Not yet humanity's greatest traitor. Elena Voss blinked. "You're right. 26-year-old Elena. Before everything. Before the betrayals. Before regrets." My hands trembled. I remembered every death. Every storm. Every scream. And now, I was here. Back at the beginning. Director Quinn cleared his throat. "Engineer Adrian." I looked around. Same conference room. Same people. Same smiles. Same lies. This was the meeting. The day Nova Aerospace rejected my Omega Forge proposal. The day my life began collapsing. And this time, I remembered everything. Director Quinn smiled politely. "We appreciate your passion, Adrian. But a flying fortress? Mobile habitats? Climate extinction theories? This sounds absurd." Laughter spread around the room. Exactly like before. Last life I begged. I explained. I argued. I sacrificed my dignity. This time, I simply sat down. Director Quinn frowned. No response. No. The room became quiet. Marcus smiled. "Come on, Adrian. Surely you have something else to add." I looked at him. In 13 years, this man would betray billions. But right now, nobody knew. Not even him. "No." He raised an eyebrow. "No. No." Director Quinn looked almost disappointed. The meeting ended. People whispered, ridiculed, laughed. I walked out calmly. Because I knew. 3 years later, abnormal weather would begin. 5 years later, governments would panic. 10 years later, the world would freeze. And this time, I wouldn't spend my life proving myself to people who never deserved it. Rain fell over the city. I sat alone inside my apartment. The old room. The old desk. Everything felt unreal. I opened my computer, then slowly typed. Global weather archives. Solar fluctuations. Ice age models. Supply chains. Satellite records. Everything. Everything I'd learned over 14 years. Thousands of files. Memories became data. Predictions became numbers. At dawn, I leaned back. One thought remained. The Sky Arc. Not the old version. The improved version. No civilian cities. No corrupt committees. No governments. No parasites. Only people worth saving. My phone vibrated. Elena. I stared at her name. Last life, she had become my wife. We had survived 11 years together. She had cried when her parents died. She had held my hand during the third famine. And in the end, she chose the escape pod. Not me. Not the civilians. The pod. The phone continued ringing. I pressed reject, then blocked the number. Silence filled the room. It hurt more than I expected. But pain and regret weren't the same thing. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, I opened a new document. Project Omega Forge. Version 2. This life begins now. 3 months later, Nova Aerospace announced layoffs. Exactly like before. Engineers panicked. Executives blamed budgets. Marcus approached me in the cafeteria. Adrian. I continued eating. He sat opposite me. You seem different. I smiled slightly. People change. Still upset about the proposal? No. He narrowed his eyes. No. I shrugged. You won. His expression became strange. Last life, I had argued with him endlessly. This time, I had nothing to say. Silence unsettled people more than anger. You know, Marcus smiled. Some investors are interested in your concepts. I nearly laughed. Of course. Even now, greed existed. No. His smile froze. No. I work alone. He stared, then left. Confused. Good. Stay confused. I sold everything. Car. Furniture. Awards. Savings. People call me crazy. My parents worried. Friends disappeared. None of it mattered. I purchased an abandoned shipyard near the eastern coast. Nobody understood why. Because nobody knew. 3 years later, coastlines would become war zones. Ships would become kingdoms. Sky platforms would become civilization. A rusted warehouse became my home. At night, I designed. By day, I welded. Months became years. No shortcuts. No committees. No applause. Only work. And memories. Sometimes I dreamed of the dead. Eunice smiling. Iris laughing. Professor May complaining. Every morning, I woke with tears. Not because they were gone. Because they hadn't even met me yet. Year 2044. The first anomalies appeared. Snow in tropical regions. Strange winds. Mass animal migrations. Scientists debated. Governments denied. Markets ignored. But I knew. Humanity had entered the countdown. That same week, someone arrived unexpectedly. A woman stood outside my warehouse. Tall. Black hair. Sharp eyes. Military posture. Captain Iris Kane. 29 years old. Still alive. Still human. Not yet the legendary commander who would die defending refugees. My hands froze. She frowned. Engineer Adrian Blake? I couldn't answer immediately. Because I remembered carrying her body. I remembered burying her beneath frozen mountains. And now, she stood here alive. Sir, I swallowed. Yes. She handed me a document. The military rejected my climate reports. Someone anonymously purchased them. I smiled. I did. She looked surprised. You believe me? Completely. For the first time in months, I saw genuine confusion on someone's face. Why? Because I'd already seen you die. Because you deserve better. Because this time, you won't be alone. But I only said, coffee. She blinked. That's your answer? Coffee. A small smile appeared. You're strange. No, the world was strange. I simply remembered. Night came. Rain struck the warehouse roof. Iris studied the blueprints spread across the table. and she slowly stood. Adrian. What exactly are you building? I looked toward the massive skeleton hidden beneath tarps. Steel. Engines. Energy conduits. Dreams. Regrets. Hope. The future. She laughed softly. No, seriously. I met her eyes, and for the first time since returning, I spoke the truth. The world will freeze. Silence. Then, that's insane. I know. You believe it. I've seen enough. She folded her arms. Nobody will listen. I don't need everyone. Thunder echoed outside. She looked at the endless blueprints, then at me, then back again. Something changed inside her eyes. Not belief. Curiosity. Suppose you're right. I am. What do you need? I stared. Last life, nobody asked that question. Not once. Not until disaster came. What? What do you need, Adrian? The rain grew louder. And suddenly, I almost cried. Because after returning, after betrayal, after loneliness, someone had finally asked, not what I could give, not what I could sacrifice, not what I could save, but what I needed. I smiled. A lot of steel. Captain Iris laughed. And somewhere beyond the storm clouds, destiny quietly changed. This time, I won't do it again. This time, I will build something worth protecting. And I will choose who enters. Not because humanity deserves saving, but because some people do. Rainwater ran down the warehouse windows while Captain Iris Kane stood motionless in front of the enormous structure hidden beneath black tarps. She wasn't laughing anymore. Neither was I. Her fingers slowly touched the edge of one blueprint. The world will freeze, she repeated quietly. Not mocking, not dismissing, just repeating, as if testing whether those words sounded any less impossible the second time. And you're serious. I am. She looked at me. How serious? I walked toward the main table and unlocked a steel cabinet. Hundreds of files filled its shelves. Climate simulations, satellite records, food production projections, ocean current models, migration patterns, death rates, and memories. I handed her one document. She frowned. Antarctic temperatures. Read page 6. 5 minutes later, her expression changed. Then page 15. Then page 23. Her breathing slowed. This? Impossible. Terrifying. I nodded. Good. She lowered the papers. Good. If you're scared, then you understand. Thunder echoed outside. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she asked, why tell me? Not because you died protecting children during the 9th blizzard. Not because I carried your body myself. Not because I promised your grave I wouldn't fail again. I simply answered, because you're someone worth trusting. Something flickered in her eyes. Then she smiled faintly. Terrible reason. Still here. She looked around the warehouse. Apparently. 2 weeks later, she returned. Not alone. 3 large trucks enter the shipyard. Steel beams. Military scrap. Power units. Hydraulic systems. I walked outside in disbelief. Iris climbed down from the first truck. You said you needed steel. I didn't ask for this. You didn't. Then why? She shrugged. Because I decided you're either a genius or insane. And she smiled. I've worked with both. Behind her, an older mechanic stepped out. Gray beard. Massive shoulders. Tobias Grant. Last life, he died fixing engines during the 6th famine. Another ghost. Alive again. He glanced at me. So you're the kid she keeps talking about. I blinked. Kid, I'm 57. He extended his hand. Tobias. I shook it silently. Another life saved. Another chance. He looked around. Ugly place. Thanks. But I've built uglier. Iris grinned. We brought tools. I couldn't answer immediately. Last life, I spent 4 years begging corporations. This life, people came on their own. Maybe fate wasn't entirely cruel. The Omega Forge slowly awakened. Not the flying fortress. Not yet. First came the factory. 3 buildings. Assembly rooms. Machine workshops. Energy testing chambers. The old shipyard became alive. Days passed with welding sparks and laughter. Tobias cursed every machine. Iris cursed Tobias. And somehow, the silence inside me began changing. Not disappearing. Changing. But peace never lasted long. One afternoon, a black luxury car stopped outside. I recognized it immediately. Marcus Hale. He stepped out wearing a perfect suit. Same smile. Same confidence. Different timeline. He entered without invitation. What a place. Nobody answered. His eyes scanned the machinery, then the blueprints, and suddenly, his smile vanished. What is this? I calmly closed the documents. Private property. Marcus laughed. You disappeared for 3 years to build whatever this is. Yes. Interesting. His gaze sharpened. You know, investors would kill for technology like this. I know. And no. He blinked. No. No. He chuckled. Still stubborn. I continued working. Silence. The thing Marcus hated most. Finally, he sighed. Adrian, we've known each other since university. Come back. No. You haven't even heard the offer. I don't need to. His smile disappeared completely. People don't reject opportunities forever. I looked directly at him. People don't own opportunities forever either. For the first time, irritation appeared in his eyes. He lowered his voice. You're making enemies. I smiled. Then they should introduce themselves. He left, but before entering his car, he glanced back. Not confused anymore. Interested. And interest for men like Marcus was dangerous. That night, Iris sat opposite me with crossed arms. Who was that? Trouble. Ex-boyfriend. I nearly choked. She laughed. Relax. Toxic businessman. Same thing. Tobias burst out laughing from the kitchen. Even I smiled. But inside, something felt wrong. Marcus had noticed, which meant others would notice too. And unlike before, I had no intention of carrying everyone. Winter arrived earlier than expected. News channels called it unusual. Experts debated. People complained. Nobody panicked. Yet, one evening, the television showed emergency reports. Entire crop systems had failed overseas. Energy shortages. Snowstorms in places that never saw snow. The world laughed nervously. Exactly like last life. I turned off the screen. Iris sat beside me. Tell me honestly. I already knew the question. When? How long? 7 years. She exhaled. That's not long. No. What happens? Everything. Silence. She rubbed her forehead. No governments? No. No economy? No. No law. Eventually, no future. I looked outside. Snowflakes fell softly. There will always be a future. She studied me. Then why do you look sad? Because I know what that future costs. Because I've buried too many names. Because hope and pain are memories I carry alone. I smiled weakly. Bad memories. She didn't ask further, and I appreciated that. The first request came 3 days later. Director Quinn. Video call. I almost ignored it. Almost. His face appeared. Older. Stressed. Adrian. Director. You've done well. No apology. No shame. Straight to business. Classic Quinn. We need your help. I waited. Nova Aerospace is struggling. Still waiting. We need your reactor designs. There it was. Need. Not trust. Not respect. Need. I leaned back. No. His expression froze. No. No. You don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. Thousands of jobs are at stake. And he stared. Last life, those words would have broken me. Thousands of people. Responsibility. Duty. Guilt. But now, I remembered millions dying while men like him escaped. Adrian. His voice became heavy. People depend on us. No. What? They depend on themselves. His face darkened. This bitterness will destroy you. I smiled softly. No, director. Then what? Being needed destroyed me. I ended the call. Iris had witnessed everything. She quietly asked, You aren't helping? No. What if they collapse? I stared at the silent screen. Last life, I rescued them. Again and again. And every rescue taught them one thing. That they never needed to save themselves. Every act of rescue teaches someone they never need to save themselves. Iris slowly nodded and understood. 3 months later, Nova Aerospace collapsed. News channels exploded. Thousands protested. Executives disappeared. Director Quinn resigned. Marcus Hale somehow survived. Of course he did. Rats always sense sinking ships. But something unexpected happened. Former engineers began appearing at the shipyard. Not begging, not demanding, simply asking, "Can we work?" One by one. People I barely remembered. Good people, honest people, not parasites, not opportunists. Workers, dreamers, families. Tobias looked at me. "What do we do?" I stood silently. Last life, I accepted everyone. This time, no, not everyone. Background checks. Iris smiled. Paranoid. Experienced. We rejected many. Accepted few. And slowly, the Omega Forge became a home. Not a charity. Not a burden. A family built by choice. Months later, another unexpected visitor arrived. A young woman stood outside during heavy snow. Beautiful. Short silver hair. Glasses. Professor Mei Lin. 30 years old. Climate scientist. Another grave from my memories. Alive. My chest tightened. She adjusted her glasses. "Excuse me." I couldn't move. "Sir." "Alive." She was alive. "Are you Engineer Adrian Blake?" I swallowed. "Yes. I'm Professor Mei Lin." I knew. God, I knew. She smiled awkwardly. "This may sound strange, but..." She lifted a folder. "Someone purchased my rejected climate models." I smiled helplessly. I did. Her eyes widened. "You believe me?" I laughed softly. "Apparently I have a habit." She blinked. "Habit? Coffee." Behind me, Iris burst into laughter. "Seriously?" I shrugged. "It worked before." Professor May looked confused. "Before what?" I smiled. "Long story." Late that night, May stood in front of the blueprints. And unlike Iris, she didn't call me insane. Instead, she whispered, "This could work." I looked up. "What?" "The Omega Forge." She pointed toward the designs. "The thermal systems, floating support structure, atmospheric filters." Her voice trembled. "This isn't madness." I stared. Last life, nobody said that. Nobody. May slowly turned. "Who designed this?" I did. "No." She shook her head. "Impossible." "Why?" Her eyes widened. "Because this is 20 years ahead of modern engineering." Silence. Then she whispered, "Who are you?" My hand froze. The room became quiet. Rain tapped the windows. Iris looked between us. Tobias stopped drinking. And for the first time since returning, someone had asked the question I feared most. "Who are you?" Not what I built, not what I knew, but who I was. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. I didn't know anymore. Was I Adrian Blake? Engineer? Survivor? Ghost? A man carrying 14 years nobody remembered? Or something else? I looked toward the unfinished skeleton of the future, then quietly answered, "I'm someone who ran out of chances." Professor May's eyes narrowed. "No," she whispered. "People who run out of chances don't build miracles." And somehow, those words hurt more than accusations. Because maybe, deep inside, I still didn't believe I deserved this second life. Outside, snow began falling earlier than any weather forecast predicted. And far away, governments quietly started asking questions. Questions that would eventually lead them here. To the Omega Forge. To me. And to secrets I wasn't ready to reveal. The first man who tried to buy the Omega Forge arrived with a smile. The second arrived with lawyers. The third brought soldiers. None of them understood what they were looking at. And none of them understood me. Snow drifted across the shipyard while I stood on the unfinished platform overlooking the sea. Massive steel frames stretched toward the sky. Hundreds of workers moved below. Sparks flashed like stars. Professor Mei Lin approached quietly, holding a tablet. 3 more requests. I didn't turn around. "Delete them. They represent governments." "Delete them." She sighed. "One day you'll run out of people to offend. One day they'll run out of time." May stared at me. "You really believe that?" I smiled faintly. "No." "What?" "I remember that." She froze. Not because of the words, but because of the way I said them. Over the last year, she'd noticed strange things. Predictions that came true. Disasters announced before satellites detected them. Entire market collapses I somehow avoided. Diseases. Energy shortages. Everything. She had stopped asking, but she had not stopped observing. "Adrian, you say strange things." So it does Tobias. That's different. She hesitated. What happened to you? I looked at the horizon. Nothing. Everything. Death. Regret. 13 years of snow. Countless graves. But none of that belonged to this world. I got tired. May's expression softened. Tired people don't carry mountains. I laughed quietly. That's because you've never met stubborn people. The shipyard had changed. 3 years ago, it was ruins. Now it was alive. 200 engineers. 600 workers. Automated production lines. Greenhouses. Power stations. Security systems. And most importantly, people laughed. Real laughter. Not survival laughter. Not desperate laughter. Life. The sound itself felt strange. Last life, happiness had disappeared so gradually that nobody noticed when it died. This time, I noticed, and I protected it. Not by doing everything, by doing less. Reject them. Tobias nearly dropped his wrench. Reject who? The Eastern Energy Union. His eyes bulged. They're offering 3 billion. 3 billion. He grabbed his head. Iris. Captain Iris Kane entered immediately. What exploded? His brain. She glanced at me. 3 billion. Yes. And no. She rubbed her forehead. Why? Because they'll ask for control. They said partnership. Words are cheap. Tobias groaned. You know, most people would sell their grandmothers for 3 billion. I smiled. Mine's dead. Neither of them laughed. Then Iris crossed her arms. You really don't trust anyone. I remained silent. Trust. Such a simple word. Last life, trust had cost millions. No, I trusted. Just carefully. I trusted Tobias to fix engines. I trusted Iris with lives. I trusted May with truth. But institutions? Committees? Politicians? No, never again. One afternoon, Iris entered my office. She looked annoyed, which meant trouble. Someone's here. Tell them no. You should see this one. I frowned. Why? He won't leave. Outside the main gate stood Director Quinn. Older, thinner, broken. Not the elegant executive I remembered. He held an umbrella with trembling hands. The sight almost felt unreal. He looked at me and lowered his head. Not proudly, not arrogantly. He bowed. I'm sorry. I blinked. Last life. Those words never came. Never. Not once. Rain poured around us. He didn't move. Neither did I. Finally, he spoke again. I destroyed people's lives. His voice shook. I believed money made me important. He laughed bitterly. Turns out companies disappear faster than pride. Silence. Adrian. He raised tired eyes. Can you forgive me? I looked at the old man. Strangely, I felt nothing. Not hatred. Not anger. Nothing. Because the man who needed revenge had died in another world. I don't know. His shoulders slumped. Fair enough. He nodded. Then I'll ask something else. What? Can I work? I stared. Work? Not power. Not money. Work. Behind me, Tobias whispered. Hell froze. I almost laughed. Director Quinn smiled weakly. I know machines. You know meetings. I learned. His eyes lowered. I had to. I watched him carefully. Last life, I would have accepted instantly. This life, no. I stepped aside. Consequences mattered. Growth mattered. And apologies mattered less than actions. We'll see. Tears appeared in his eyes. But he nodded and left. No arguments. No manipulation. No demands. Just acceptance. I watched the rain swallow him. Perhaps suffering had finally taught him what success never could. At midnight, May entered my workshop. She placed coffee beside me. I watched him carefully. Last life, I would have accepted instantly. This life, no. I stepped aside. Consequences mattered. Growth mattered. And apologies mattered less than actions. We'll see. Tears appeared in his eyes. But he nodded and left. No arguments. No manipulation. No demands. Just acceptance. I watched the rain swallow him. Perhaps suffering had finally taught him what success never could. At midnight, May entered my workshop. She placed coffee beside me. You let him go. Last year, you would have thrown him out. No. She raised an eyebrow. No. I would have helped him. And now? I stared at the steel core rotating slowly. Now I wait. For what? To see if people mean what they say. She smiled. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing. I looked at her. Did you steal that line? She laughed. Maybe, but she was right. Stepping aside was harder than sacrifice, because sacrifice made you feel needed. Doing nothing forced others to reveal themselves. Winter came early. Again, too early. Snow-covered regions that should have been warm. Governments began panicking. Officially, they denied everything. Unofficially, they started preparing. Military budgets doubled. Food prices rose. Markets trembled. And suddenly, Marcus Hale returned. But this time he wasn't smiling. He barged into my office. You knew. Everyone froze. I looked up calmly. Knew what? The weather. His voice cracked. The shortages. The failures. Iris immediately stood. Sit down. He ignored her. You knew. I remained seated. So. His eyes widened. So. He slammed documents onto my desk. Market reports. Resource predictions. Ocean current charts. All matching my hidden purchases. Who are you? Interesting. The same question again. I smiled. An engineer. Stop lying. He pointed outside. This place shouldn't exist. Neither should I. But I said nothing. Marcus paced furiously. I can help. No. I have connections. No. Resources. No. His face twisted. Adrian. What? We were friends. The room became quiet. Friends. Such a dangerous word. Marcus. He froze. When Nova collapsed, where were you? He remained silent. When workers lost homes. Silence. When engineers committed suicide. Nothing. I stood slowly. When did friendship begin again? His face turned pale. And for the first time, Marcus looked afraid. Not angry. Afraid. Because silence showed him something. He no longer mattered to me. And irrelevance terrified people more than hatred. That night, May couldn't sleep. I found her studying old data. She looked exhausted. Adrian. Something doesn't make sense. My heartbeat slowed. What? She held up a file. This storm. It happened exactly as you predicted. Coincidence? No. Another file. Food crisis. Another. Migration waves. Another. Energy failures. Her voice trembled. Nobody predicts like this. Silence. Then she whispered. You talk about people before meeting them. I froze. You recognized Iris instantly. Nothing. You knew Tobias. Silence. You purchased my research before I published it. Her eyes turned red. Who are you? Again. That question. Again. And this time, I couldn't escape. I slowly sat down. Snow tapped against the window. I had friends. May listened quietly. They died. Pain rose inside me. People I couldn't save. She remained silent. And somehow, I closed my eyes. I woke up here. No dramatic reaction. No laughter. No accusations. Nothing. Just silence. Then, May sat beside me. That sounds lonely. I opened my eyes. Not crazy. Not impossible. Lonely? Tears almost came. She smiled gently. Adrian. Whether it's true or not. She took my hand. That sounds lonely. And suddenly, 14 years of grief crashed into me. Not because she believed, but because she understood. I looked away. I'm tired. I know. I'm scared. I know. I failed them. You survived. Tears finally fell. For the first time since returning. I cried. Not from pain. Not from betrayal. But because someone finally saw how heavy the memories were. 3 days later, Director Quinn returned. Not with requests. Not with excuses. He carried a toolbox. Tobias stared. What the hell is this? Quinn smiled awkwardly. I enrolled in repair classes. Silence. Then Tobias burst into laughter so hard he almost died. You? Quinn nodded sheepishly. I can change filters. Nobody believed him, including himself. But every morning, he came, worked, sweated, failed, returned, without complaint, without pride, without titles. And I watched, because people deserve consequences, but they also deserve chances. Late one night, alarms suddenly screamed. Iris rushed into the command room. Adrian, what? Satellite emergency. May's face had turned white. Look, the screen displayed frozen ocean currents. Entire systems collapsing. 5 years early. My blood froze. Impossible. Impossible. Last life. This happened much later. I grabbed the data. No mistake. No error. The timeline had changed. And not for the better. Iris whispered. What does this mean? My voice came out cold. It means... I stared at the storm patterns. It started. What started? I looked at them. Fear. Real fear. Not because the world was ending, but because for the first time since returning, I no longer knew what came next. And somewhere far away, hidden beneath ice and darkness, something ancient had awakened before its time. Something that didn't exist in my memories. Something impossible. And for the first time in 2 lives, I was blind. The first thing I felt wasn't fear. It was helplessness. For 14 years in my previous life, I survived because I knew what came next. Storms, famines, wars, collapse, betrayals. Every disaster had already happened once. But the images on the monitor weren't part of my memories. May's fingers trembled over the keyboard. Adrian, her voice was pale. The currents shouldn't freeze like this. They didn't. Iris turned toward me immediately. What? I swallowed. They didn't. Silence. Tobias stopped laughing. Even Director Quinn froze. Nobody spoke. Because they all heard it. Not shouldn't. Didn't. As if I wasn't predicting. As if I was remembering. I stared at the maps. Entire northern oceans. Temperature collapse. Unknown seismic movements. Ice growth accelerating. 5 years too early. And something else. Something hidden beneath the numbers. Something that felt wrong. Very wrong. May slowly looked at me. Her eyes weren't shocked anymore. They were worried. Not about the world. About me. Adrian. You knew this wasn't normal. I nodded. Yes. Then tell us. No accusations. No fear. Only trust. And trust was harder to face than suspicion. Because suspicion expected lies. Trust expected truth. I closed my eyes. For a long time, nobody interrupted. Then I quietly said, I died. Nobody moved. I watched humanity end. The room remained silent. I watched Iris die. Captain Iris blinked. I buried Tobias. The old mechanic lowered his head. I fail, May. Professor May stared quietly. I trusted the wrong people. Director Quinn's face turned white. And then I woke up here. Nothing. No laughter. No disbelief. Only silence. Then Tobias scratched his beard. That explains why you're weird. I stared. What? He shrugged. Honestly, I thought you were possessed. Iris burst out laughing. Even May smiled. And somehow, the tension broke. Not because they fully understood, but because they chose to. And that was enough. 3 days later, government helicopters arrived. 7 of them. I already knew why. They had noticed the Omega Forge. The climate changes. The hidden infrastructure. They were scared. And scared people always look for control. General Samuel Ward stepped out first. 60 years old. Sharp eyes. Same man who became a dictator in my previous life. But right now, he still wore the mask of a patriot. We need to speak. I nodded. Inside the conference room, 20 armed guards remained outside. General Ward studied everything carefully. The world is changing. Yes. You knew. Yes. Ow. No. His expression changed. I beg your pardon? No. He frowned. This concerns humanity. So does freedom. His voice hardened. The government has authority. I smiled. The weather doesn't care. His eyes narrowed. We can protect your people. No. We can fund your project. No. We can nationalize it. Everyone in the room became silent. General Ward didn't notice. He continued. Engineer Blake. His voice became cold. You have resources that belong to humanity. I leaned forward. No. What? They belong to people who built them. He laughed. History won't remember private ownership. I smiled. History barely remembers honesty. His face darkened. You're making dangerous enemies. So are you. Neither of us blinked. Then, May quietly slid a tablet across the table. General Ward frowned. What is this? Evidence. He opened it, and his expression changed instantly. His deputies' accounts, black budgets, missing aid supplies, illegal sales, human trafficking, corruption, all of it. His hand shook. Where? May smiled softly. We've been busy. The old general slowly looked up. Fear. Real fear. Not because of me. Because the truth existed. And truth terrified powerful people. He stood immediately. This conversation isn't over. No. I smiled. It just ended. But someone else had made a mistake. Marcus Hale. And unlike General Ward, Marcus had become desperate. Desperate people became stupid. He appeared on television 1 week later. National broadcast. Thousands watching. And he smiled. Adrian Blake is hiding technology from humanity. I almost laughed. Iris threw popcorn at the screen. He's serious? Tobias nearly choked. But Marcus continued. He controls energy systems. He controls food production. He raised his voice dramatically. Who gave him that right? I muted the television. Silence. Then Tobias sighed. Idiot. May shook her head. He's scared. I looked at the screen. No, not scared. Greedy. Same as before. Only this time, I wasn't carrying him. And without someone cleaning his mess, people eventually drowned in it. 3 days later, the truth came out. Not because of me, not because of revenge, because greed couldn't stay hidden forever. Journalists discovered Marcus's old records. Market manipulations, fraud, resource theft, illegal transactions. Companies collapsed overnight. His partners betrayed him. Investors ran. Friends disappeared. And suddenly, the same media that praised him began tearing him apart. I watched quietly. No satisfaction. No joy. Only understanding. Truth does not create damage. It reveals where damage already exists. Iris sat beside me. You aren't happy. No. Why? Because I already buried him once. She understood immediately and didn't ask further. The storm came 2 days later. Without warning, the sky turned black. Wind speeds exceeded predictions. Entire cities lost power. Panic spread. News stations collapsed. Roads froze. People screamed. And suddenly, thousands stood outside the Omega Forge. Families, children, old people, workers, refugees, not soldiers, not politicians, people. Captain Iris stared at the cameras. Adrian, I know. What do we do? The old me would have opened everything. Everyone. No conditions. No limits. And eventually, everyone would have died. I closed my eyes. Then I spoke quietly. Screen them. Iris looked shocked. What? Medical checks. But food capacity. Adrian. Security checks. Her eyes trembled. People will die. Pain stabbed my chest. I know. She whispered. You can hear them. I could. Children crying. Mothers begging. Desperate voices. And every sound reminded me of another life. Another failure. Tears filled my eyes. I hear them. Then why? Because if everyone dies, my voice broke. Then nobody survives. Silence. Iris stood there for a long time. Then she nodded. And together, we made impossible choices. Not because we were heartless. Because survival itself was cruel. That night, May found me alone. I sat in darkness, unable to move. She quietly sat beside me. You hate yourself. I smiled bitterly. A little. You saved 12,000. I abandoned 50. Her eyes softened. No. What? You couldn't become God. I laughed weakly. I tried. I know. Her hand gently touched mine. But you're human. Outside, snow covered the sea. Inside, tears silently fell. Not because I regretted my choice. Because some choices hurt even when they're right. Morning arrived. And with it, a broken man. Marcus Hale. His suit was gone. His face bruised. Snow covered his shoulders. He stood outside the gates. Alone. No bodyguards. No arrogance. No smile. Only exhaustion. He looked older. Smaller. Human. I went outside. Neither of us spoke. Finally, he lowered his head. I lost everything. I nodded. I know. They betrayed me. Silence. He laughed bitterly. Funny, isn't it? I remained quiet. Tears appeared in his eyes. I thought power meant safety. He looked toward the massive fortress. You built all this? Yes. Why? I stared at the white horizon. Because I was afraid. He smiled weakly. Still honest. Then his voice broke. Adrian. I'm sorry. This time, Not manipulation. Not politics. Not pride. Just regret. Real regret. And strangely, I felt sad, because I remembered the young Marcus. University days. Dreams. Ambition. The man before greed. Perhaps we both died in different ways. I forgive you. He froze. What? I forgive you. His tears finally fell. But I won't forget. He nodded slowly, and for the first time, neither of us were enemies. Just two men carrying different ruins. That night, alarms screamed again. Not outside. Inside. May rushed into the laboratory. Her face had no color. Adrian. What? The satellite. I ran. Everyone gathered. And then, my blood froze. Deep beneath Antarctica. Movement. Not seismic activity. Not tectonic shifts. Movement. Regular. Rhythmic. Like breathing. Impossible. No, not impossible. Alive. Something was alive beneath the ice. And on the monitor, an energy pattern appeared. Ancient, unknown, and terrifyingly similar to the Omega Core. I slowly stepped back, because for the first time, I realized something horrifying. Maybe humanity wasn't the first civilization to face the world freeze. And maybe the Omega Forge wasn't my invention at all. Nobody spoke for almost 30 seconds. The laboratory remained completely silent. On the monitor, the energy pattern beneath Antarctica continued pulsing, like a heartbeat, like something sleeping or waiting. Tobias removed his glasses. No. His voice sounded unusually quiet. No. May stared at the screen. That's impossible. Captain Iris folded her arms. Someone explain. Nobody could, because I had never seen this before. Not in my first life. Not in any memory. Not in any archive. Nothing. And that terrified me. For the first time since returning, I couldn't rely on the future. I couldn't rely on memories. I couldn't rely on what I knew. I was just Adrian Blake again. Just a man. And strangely, that thought frightened me more than the unknown beneath the ice. May slowly looked toward me. What do we do? I opened my mouth and stopped, because for 14 years, everyone had asked me that. What do we do? How do we survive? How do we save them? And every time I had answered. Every time I carried the burden. Every time I became smaller. Until eventually, nothing remained. I looked at May, then at Iris, then at Tobias, and finally smiled. What do you think? The three of them blinked. Iris frowned. That's your answer? Yes. Tobias scratched his beard. You're asking us? Yes. May slowly smiled. And suddenly, I understood something. I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't have to be. 2 hours later, the command room looked completely different. Not because of technology. Because of voices. Arguments. Ideas. Life. Tobias pointed at the map. Maybe the readings are interference. May immediately disagreed. No. Why not? The frequency is stable. Iris leaned over the table. Could it be another facility? No human civilization should have that output. They continued arguing. And for the first time, I stepped back. Not because I didn't care. Because I trusted them. And trust felt strangely peaceful. May noticed me smiling. What? Nothing. What? I laughed quietly. Nothing. But inside I thought, peace begins when winning stops mattering. Maybe that's what healing looked like. Not forgetting pain. Not pretending. Just finally allowing other people to carry some of the weight. Outside, the storm worsened. Thousands more refugees arrived. Resources became tight. Food lines stretched longer. Arguments broke out daily. Fear spread. But unlike my previous life, nobody worshipped me. And I prefer it that way. Because heroes died. Communities survived. One afternoon, Director Quinn entered carrying soup. He wore old work clothes now. Nothing expensive. Nothing polished. He smiled awkwardly. Too much salt. Tobias tasted it. It's awful. Really horrible. Quinn sighed. Again. May burst out laughing. And I simply watched. 5 years ago, this man sat in boardrooms and looked down on everyone. Now he argued over soup recipes. Life really was strange. Quinn sat beside me quietly. Adrian. I never thanked you. You already apologized. No. He smiled. Not for forgiveness. For letting me become useful again. I looked at him. He seemed smaller. older, human. And suddenly I remembered something. In my previous life, Director Quinn died alone. Drunk. Forgotten. Nobody attended his funeral. Not because he was evil, because he had become irrelevant to everyone. Maybe this life was his second chance to keep making terrible soup. He laughed. I can do that. That night, Iris stood beside me on the observation deck. Snow covered everything. She held 2 cups of coffee. Still thinking. Always. She leaned against the railing. You know something? You're less annoying. I almost choked. Less. Last year you looked like a walking funeral. I laughed. She smiled. There it is. What? The smile. Wind howled softly. Neither of us spoke. Then she asked quietly, do you miss them? I understood immediately. The dead. The people from my first life. I nodded. Every day. And us. What about you? She looked away. Are we just replacements? The question pierced me. No. She looked back. Then what are we? I smiled softly. Miracles. Her eyes widened. And for the first time since meeting again, Captain Iris Kane looked embarrassed. She coughed. That's cheesy. Terrible, right? Horrible. But she smiled all the same. 3 days later, Professor Mei Lin entered my office carrying dozens of documents. Bad news. When you say it like that, I miss ignorance. She ignored me. Population capacity. I frowned. What about it? We can't sustain everyone. I know. No. Her voice grew serious. I mean anyone. Silence. What? She lowered the papers. If the storms continue accelerating. Her voice trembled. The sky arc won't be enough. My blood ran cold. Not enough. Impossible. The sky arc survived 13 years before. But then I remembered. The timeline had changed. Everything had accelerated. And beneath Antarctica, something had awakened. Something unknown. I slowly sat down. How long? Maybe 5 years. 5. Not 13. 5. The room became silent. Then May whispered, I'm sorry. I laughed softly. Why are you apologizing? Because I know how much this means to you. I closed my eyes. No, not again. Not everyone. Not everything. Not alone. When I opened them again, I quietly asked, what if we don't run? May froze. What? What if we stop surviving? Adrian, what if we fight? She stared at me, then smiled. Slowly. Dangerously. I was hoping you'd say that. For the next month, the Omega Forge transformed. Not into a shelter. Into a fleet. Massive aerial platforms. Weapon systems. Deep scanners. Exploration vessels. Research divisions. No longer humanity's last refuge. Humanity's answer. And everyone changed with it. Iris trained civilians. Tobias led engineering teams. Director Quinn managed supplies. May became obsessed with Antarctica. Sometimes I found her asleep beside computers. And every time she denied it. I wasn't sleeping. You were snoring. That's slander. I laughed. And somehow, these small moments mattered more than victories. Then one morning, everything stopped. An old song echoed through the cafeteria. People laughed. Children ran. Snow fell outside. And suddenly, I realized something strange. I was happy. Not relieved. Not hopeful. Happy. The realization almost scared me. Because happiness felt dangerous. Happiness meant attachment. Attachment meant loss. Loss meant pain. And pain had always followed me. I quietly left the room. But May followed. Adrian. Running away? No. Liar. She stood beside me. Snowflakes landed in her hair. You know what your problem is? I'm sure you'll tell me. You think suffering is loyalty. I blinked. What? You think being miserable honors the dead. Silence. And then, she smiled gently. But they're gone. Her voice softened. And you're still here. I looked away. She continued quietly. You survived. By accident. No. By luck. No. Her eyes turned red. By fighting. I couldn't answer. Because she was right. And I hated that she was right. Then she laughed softly. And besides, what? If I died and found out you spent your whole life looking miserable, I'd come back just to slap you. I burst into laughter. Real laughter. The kind I hadn't heard from myself in years. And suddenly, the burden inside me felt lighter. Not gone, just lighter. That night, an alarm shattered the peace. Captain Iris rushed into the bridge. Adrian, what happened? She pointed at the screen. Movement. Antarctica. Again. But this time, not one signal. Hundreds. Everyone froze. May's face turned white. Impossible. The ice beneath Antarctica had cracked. And deep below, gigantic structures emerged. Cities. Not ruins. Cities. Frozen. Ancient. And alive. Then something appeared on the monitor. A transmission. Not human. Not modern. Unknown symbols. Nobody understood. Except me. Because somehow, the symbols translated themselves inside my mind. One sentence. 7 words. And those 7 words turned my blood cold. Omega error detected. Awaiting final authorization. Every light inside the command room flickered. And beneath the ice, something ancient opened its eyes. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The command room had fallen silent. On the monitor, the strange message remained unchanged. Omega error detected. Awaiting final authorization. Tobias slowly removed his glasses. No. His voice cracked. Absolutely no. Captain Iris stared at the screen. What language is that? May looked equally pale. You understood it. I couldn't answer. Because I had understood it. Not through memory. Not through science. Not through logic. I simply knew. And that frightened me. Adrian. May stepped closer. What does it mean? My voice sounded distant. I don't know. But deep down, that wasn't true. I knew one thing. Whatever slept beneath Antarctica, it had been waiting. And somehow, it had been waiting for me. 3 days later, the first exploration fleet departed. Snowstorms swallowed half the sky. The sky arc hovered above the ocean like a steel mountain. Years ago, this dream had ended in betrayal. This time, I wasn't alone. Captain Iris commanded the escort ships. Professor May supervised the sensors. Tobias spent the entire trip complaining about temperatures. Director Quinn nearly cried every time the engines made strange noises. And strangely, I enjoyed every second. Not because danger had disappeared, because life had returned. As Antarctica came into view, silence spread across the bridge. Nobody had prepared themselves for what we saw. Entire cities buried beneath ice. Massive towers. Ancient roads. Structures larger than mountains. Not ruins. Sleeping civilizations. May's voice trembled. My God. Tobias forgot to complain. Even Iris looked speechless. Humanity wasn't first. Not even close. And beneath the center of the city, a structure waited. A tower. Black. Gigantic. And familiar. Too familiar. Because I had seen it before. Not in my first life. Not in dreams. Inside the Omega core. The same symbols. The same architecture. The same impossible feeling. Something ancient. Something watching. We landed carefully. Snowstorms screamed around us. Inside the tower. No dust. No decay. No bodies. Only silence. And at the center, a door. The moment I approached, it opened. Not mechanically. Not electronically. It recognized me. Everyone froze. May whispered. Adrian. I swallowed. I'm aware. Captain Iris placed her hand on her weapon. I don't like this. Neither do I. But I stepped forward. Because some questions followed you across 2 lifetimes. And eventually, you stopped running. Inside the chamber stood something impossible. Not a machine. Not a weapon. A woman. Sleeping. Encased inside crystal. Silver hair. Peaceful expression. Ancient clothing. Beautiful. Terrifying. And alive. Professor May stopped breathing. What? Then, her eyes opened. Blue. Calm. And ancient. She looked directly at me. Not surprised. Not confused. As though she'd simply been waiting. Authorization confirmed. Everyone raised their weapons. Except me. Because, strangely, I wasn't afraid. She slowly stepped out. And smiled. Welcome back. My blood froze. What? Her voice remained soft. 3rd generation Omega Administrator. Silence. What did you call me? You have returned. No. I shook my head. You have the wrong person. She tilted her head. No. Her eyes studied me quietly. You have changed. I've never been here. Not this body. The room became silent. Captain Iris stepped between us. Start making sense. The woman smiled politely. My name is Lyra. She looked toward the endless city beneath the ice. I was built to preserve civilizations. Built, not born. Built. May's eyes widened. Artificial intelligence. Lyra smiled. Not entirely. Tobias groaned. I hate mysteries. But I only stared, because one sentence echoed inside my mind. Welcome back. Not reborn. Not reincarnated. Back. And suddenly, memories that weren't mine flashed before my eyes. Stars. Frozen worlds. Countless civilizations. Steel arcs. Endless winters. Loss. Again. 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 I stumbled. May caught me immediately. Adrian. Pain exploded inside my head. Then, silence. And understanding. Not complete, but enough. The Omega Forge. The World Freeze. The Sky Arc. None of them have been accidents. Countless civilizations faced extinction. And every time, someone built an ark. Not to save everyone, because nobody could. To preserve hope. And somehow, I had inherited that responsibility. Not because I deserved it. Not because I was special. Because someone had to continue. Lyra quietly asked, will you assume command? Everyone looked at me. Years ago, I would have answered immediately. I would have sacrificed everything. Carried everything. Destroyed myself again. But now, I looked around. At Iris. M.A. At Tobias. At Quinn. At the people who laughed. The people who argued. The people who carried burdens beside me. And for the first time, I smiled. No. Everyone froze. Lyra blinked. No. I nodded. No. Confusion filled the chamber. Captain Iris looked worried. Adrian. I laughed softly. The Olmi would have accepted. I looked toward Lyra. But I'm not alone. Silence. Then I turned toward my family. Not by blood. Not by destiny. By choice. What do you think? May smiled immediately. I hate it. Tobias laughed. Too much paperwork. Director Quinn coughed. I'm retired. Iris folded her arms. And if we say no, then we go home. She stared, then laughed. Real laughter. You idiot. Tears appeared in her eyes. But we're already here. And one by one, everyone smiled. Lyra quietly observed. Then something incredible happened. She smiled. Not artificial. Not programmed. Human. Consensus accepted. And suddenly, the ancient city awakened. Lights spread across mountains. Engines older than history roared. Civilizations long asleep breathed again. Not because of me, because of us. Years later, children played beneath artificial skies. Cities floated above oceans. Storms still existed. Winters still remained. But humanity endured. Not through heroes. Not through kings. Through people. Simple people. People who cooked terrible soup. People who complained about engines. People who argued over coffee. People who refused to carry burdens alone. One afternoon, I stood on the observation deck. Snow fell gently. Professor May sat beside me reading. Captain Iris trained recruits below. Tobias yelled at everyone. Director Quinn argued with cooks. Life. Beautiful, ordinary life. May smiled. Thinking again? Always. What now? I looked toward the endless clouds and remembered another world. Another death. Another lonely man. The man who believed saving everyone meant destroying himself. I smiled softly. The second chance was never about changing them. May closed her book. It wasn't. I shook my head. It was about changing me. She smiled quietly. And I think snowflakes danced around us. Children laughed below. The sky arc drifted peacefully through the heavens. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt no regret, no guilt, no anger, only gratitude. I think I'm finally home. Far away, the endless winter continued. But inside the ark, warm lights glowed, laughter echoed, and humanity moved forward. Not perfectly, but together. And that was enough.